Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. In today's class, we are going to start a new chapter, that is human reproduction. This is the third chapter in your class 12th NCERT, and it is a very simple and straightforward chapter. And I'm sure that you will get a lot of questions both in your NEET exam as well as in your class 12 board exams. So without wasting any time, let us begin this chapter. The first thing that we have to study in this chapter is that what is reproduction? What is the meaning of this word reproduction? So if you look at the first point, it says that the word reproduction is derived from two words, re, which means again, and production, which means to produce something new. Now, if you combine the meaning of these two words, you will arrive at the definition of reproduction, which is a biological act to produce a new offspring. Now, some of you may not know what an offspring is. The word offspring simply means a new baby. Sometimes in some books, the word offspring is also written as progeny. So progeny, offspring, or baby all are similar words. So reproduction is basically the biological act of producing a new offspring that are similar to the parent. Now I would like to stress on one point over here that when you studied reproduction, you studied that there are two modes of reproduction. Okay, there is an asexual mode of reproduction and there is a sexual mode of reproduction. In asexual mode of reproduction, the offspring that is produced is clone of the parent, or you can say it is identical to the parent. Identical means it is a 100% copy of the parent. But if you consider sexual reproduction, the offspring that is produced is not a clone of the parent. In fact, it is similar to the parents, but with its own unique characteristics. So when you study the definition of reproduction in terms of human reproduction, you always have to keep in mind that the new offspring that is produced is similar to the parent and not the clone of the parent. The third and the final point says that reproduction is essential for the continuity of the species. Now this is very simple point because we all know that in case without reproduction, there would be no continuity of species. All species exist on this earth because of this property of reproduction, which is very essential for their continuity. So now I hope all these 3 points are clear to you. We can move on to the next slide. Now in this slide, there are four characteristics written. Four characteristics written regarding human reproduction. All these four characteristics are important before we start studying about the different reproductive system and the chronological order of events in reproduction. So we should know these four characteristics. The first characteristic about human reproduction is that humans are unisexual organisms. What is the meaning of this word unisexual organism? Unisexual organism means that in case of humans, there are separate male and female organisms. That is, there is a male organism and there is a female organism. The male organism has the male reproductive parts and the female organism has female reproductive parts. That means the sexes are separate. Second point is that humans reproduce via sexual reproduction, or we can say humans reproduce sexually. Sexual reproduction is when the offspring get its genetic material from both the parents. That is, parents of opposite sex are involved in reproduction. If you compare it to asexual mode of reproduction, there the offspring receives its genetic material only from a single parent, and that is why that offspring is a clone of the parent. But because in humans sexual reproduction takes place, therefore the offspring has unique characteristics as well. Then the third thing is that humans are sexually dimorphic. What is the meaning of sexual dimorphism? Sexual dimorphism is basically the property through which you can differentiate between who is a male and who is a female based on their physical differences. Based on their physical differences. Uh, when we can differentiate between who is a male and who is a female in a particular species without looking at their reproductive organ, that property is called sexual dimorphism, and the sexual dimorphism is present in humans. The fourth property is that humans are viviparous organism. Viviparity means that humans can give birth to young ones, that is, humans do not lay eggs. So I hope these four characteristics, that is unisexuality, sexual reproduction, sexual dimorphism, and viviparity are clear to you. Now let us move on to the next slide. Now we will study about the different chronological order of the reproductive events in humans. That is, in order to reproduce sexually, what are the events that have to be done, or what are the events that have to be undergone in order for a baby to be born, in order for a new offspring to be produced. So the first event is gametogenesis. The word gametogenesis itself is self-explanatory. Here also you can break down the word into gamete and genesis. So the process of formation of gametes or sex cells is called gametogenesis. This is very basic. The male gamete is called a sperm, also known as spermatozoa, and the female gamete is called ovum or ooted. After the gametes are formed, gametes have to be transferred to the female reproductive tract. Now, I want to tell you one thing over here, that the male gamete, which looks something like this and is called a sperm, is a motile gamete. It is a motile gamete, whereas the female gamete, which is called an ovum, is an immotile gamete. Immotile gamete. So the sperm has to move towards the egg, okay, because sperm is motile, and in order to move towards the egg, the sperm has to be first deposited into the female reproductive tract, and that process of deposition is what we call as insemination, right? So insemination is basically the transfer or the deposition of the male gamete, that is the sperm, into the female genital tract. The third process after insemination is fertilization. When the male gametes are deposited in the female genital tract, the male gametes, that is sperms, will start to move towards the egg, and a fusion will occur of a single sperm with the ovum. That fusion process is called fertilization. As a result of fertilization, a single cell called zygote is formed. So the fourth step is zygote formation, and this fusion is actually occurring between a haploid sperm and a haploid ovum, which leads to the formation of a diploid zygote. Remember that this zygote is the first cell of the offspring. This is an important question. It is asked several times in exam, that name the first cell of any organism, or the first cell of the offspring. That's always the zygote. So what did we study over here? We studied that the sperm fuses with the ovum via a process of fertilization to form a zygote. We also studied that the sperm is a haploid. Now, what is haploid? We will study afterwards, but for now, you can remember that haploid is when any cell has half number of homologous chromosomes. And it has half number of homologous chromosomes, it has half set of homologous chromosomes, both will combine to form a diploid zygote, which has the full set of chromosomes. So the first event is gametogenesis, leads to insemination, leads to fertilization, and leads to zygote formation. Let us move on. Here is an image of fertilization that is occurring in some artificial media. An image has been captured using a microscope. You can clearly see that this is the egg. I am drawing the boundary of the egg for you. And this is the zona pellucida of the egg, which is the outer glycoprotein layer of the egg. And you can see that this egg is surrounded by numerous sperms. Let me highlight one sperm for you. This is one single sperm. Okay, so this is a very nice image, and it is a real image, so it helps you appreciate the process of fertilization. So I hope that things are clear to you and you are able to understand how fertilization actually occurs. Let us move on. The next process after fertilization has occurred was zygote formation. Then zygote starts to divide now, and it undergoes mitotic divisions to form a multicellular solid ball. Remember, the key word here is multicellular solid ball. Okay, multicellular solid ball is the key word here. This multicellular solid ball is called morula. Okay, so what did I say? The single cell zygote undergoes mitotic divisions to form a multicellular solid ball-like structure called morula. If you look down at the page, you can see that this is an image of morula. This is a morula. And okay, let me use a black pen. This is a real image captured using a microscope of morula. You can see that inside morula there are so many cells. Okay, so it has been formed via mitotic divisions of the zygote, right? So this is the morula, and let me rub it. So I hope you appreciate how a morula looks. So what is morula? That the single cell zygote undergoes mitotic division to form this multicellular solid ball called morula. Now after morula, the next stage which is formed is called blastocyst. What happens is that morula was a multicellular solid ball. Now there are many changes that happen in the morula that transform it from a multicellular solid ball to a ball of cells with a cavity inside. This cavity is called blastocele and it is filled with certain nutritive fluids, and this stage is called blastocyst. So don't get confused between these two words, blastocele and blastocyst. The cavity is called blastocele, and the stage is called blastocyst. So you can see that a cavity here has developed. This cavity is called blastocele and this stage is called blastocyst. So from the morula, the next stage is blastocyst formation. Then after blastocyst formation, the stage that comes is implantation. Implantation is the attachment of the blastocyst to the endometrial wall of the uterus for further development. This is called implantation. In this image, you can see that the blastocyst has attached the endometrial wall of the uterus and will now keep attached itself to the wall of the uterus for rest of the gestation period, and it will derive nutrients from the uterus. So I hope this slide is clear to you. Let us move on. Finally, what will happen is that after implantation, the embryo will start developing, and it will go on developing till it is till a certain time arises, and it can only grow more outside the body of the female. So that time period is called gestation. So what is gestation? It refers to the period of embryonic development which varies with each species. In case of humans, the gestation period is about 40 weeks. In different animals, it is different. Some animals have very small gestation period. Some animals have a larger duration of gestation period. And finally, with the end of gestation period, we see parturition. What is parturition? Parturition is that at the end of gestation, the baby is pushed out of the mother's uterus, and this process is called parturition or childbirth. So we started from gametogenesis, then insemination, then fertilization, zygote formation, morula formation, blastocyst, implantation, gestation, and finally parturition. Parturition is also called childbirth. So these were the chronological events that happened during human reproduction. Here we have only studied these events in a simple way, in just a simple sentence. We will understand these events in more depth as we move on in other topics of this chapter. So what have we studied? We have completed this whole paragraph, and now we are going to read the NCERT. As you are aware, humans are sexually reproducing and viviparous. We know what is sexual reproduction, we know what is viviparity. Then the reproductive events in humans include the formation of gametes. We know that what is gametogenesis. We know that sperm is the male gamete and ovum is the female gamete. Then transfer of the sperms into the female genital tract. We know this process is called insemination. Fusion of the male and the female gametes. We know this process is called fertilization that leads to the formation of zygote. I hope you remember that zygote is the diploid single cell, that is the first cell of the offspring. This is followed by formation and development of blastocyst. Now in the NCERT they have skipped the morula stage. So, but you must remember that after zygote, blastocyst is not formed immediately. First, the morula stage is formed, and then the blastocyst stage is formed, and its attachment to the uterine wall. This is called implantation. After implantation, the embryo will undergo development, which is called gestation, and finally, at the end of this developmental period, there will be delivery of the baby, which is called parturition. You have learned that these reproductive events occur after puberty. Now, one thing I think we have missed in this lecture is that what is puberty? See, puberty is that time period during which one becomes sexually mature, or we can say that during which one gains the ability to produce an offspring. That is puberty. There are remarkable differences between the reproductive events in the male and in the female. For example, sperm formation continues even in old men, but formation of ovum ceases in women around the age of 50 years. So this line basically, that sperm formation continues even in old men, but formation of ovum ceases in women around the age of 50 years. The reason for this we will study when we will study the process of spermatogenesis and oogenesis. So in this lecture, we studied the basics of human reproduction. We studied about the different chronological events in human reproduction, starting from gametogenesis to insemination, fertilization, and zygote formation, morula formation, blastocyst formation, implantation, gestation, and parturition. We studied about the four characteristics of human reproduction. That is, humans are viviparous, humans reproduce sexually, okay, and all these characteristics. So I hope you like this lecture, and that's all for today. We will meet in the next lecture. Thank you.